Welcome to the Democracy's College podcast series. This podcast focuses on educational equity, justice, and excellence for all students in P20 educational pathways. This podcast is a product of the Office of Community College Research and Leadership, or OCCRL, at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Learn more about OCCRL at occrl.illinois.edu. In this episode, Edmund Graham from OCCRL talks with Dr. Dimitra Jackson, an assistant professor for higher education at Texas Tech University, about diversity in STEM.
First, Dimitra, thank you for taking out the time, your thoughts and reflections on such an important topic. I guess we'll get right into it. So, Dr. Jackson, we know most of your research has kind of focused on adult learners in community colleges, particularly enrolled in STEM areas, programs of study. What led to your interest in this area of studying STEM in the community college context?
It was sort of a perfect storm, I guess, to put it into context. I took some community college courses while in college, only because some of the courses did not line up with scheduling and when I needed to graduate. In college, I started off in regulatory science, but left that and pursued something different.
Right.
So community college and STEM was always in my background. When I got to Iowa State, I worked with Frankie La'anen, and when I got to Iowa State with Frankie was when everything started to come together, because his research was on that very thing.
Right.
And so after working with him, it became a personal venture, I guess, to say the least, because it was very much something I was connected to personally. And so I took it on as my professional venture, almost like I was answering some questions about myself through the voices of participants. And I've been doing it ever since. That's been my research.
That's actually pretty cool. So your background set you up for something that you probably didn't expect in the future. So
Exactly.
came full circle.
Yep, literally.
That's actually pretty cool. So we know that a significant number of students of color earn CTE certificates, and kind of given the overlap in CTE programs of study in STEM areas and opportunities for high school demand, can you unpack a little bit why there are more students of color persist in transferring and earning degrees in STEM?
I definitely think it goes back to the K-12 environment. If we really look at how students are prepared, it's very different from how we were prepared growing up, or I guess I should say I was prepared growing up. We took field trips.
Right.
We were exposed to things.
Right.
The K-12 system had more money to bring in speakers and different individuals who could do experiments with us, and so it looked different. The makeup and the structure of the educational environment was different. Now, students, if ever, take field trips.
Right.
And while this is understandable given different factors such as funds and all of that, it does put our students at a disadvantage because they're limited to what the institution, whatever it may be, can't afford them. And these very students who are exposed to little, they then are expected to move on and declare a major.
Right.
Okay, so at what point do they learn about the different activities? Not just careers, but then the activities that are associated with some of these careers. Well, unless they're able to get this information on their own, because it's not a part of the K-12 curriculum, then they just make informed decisions. And they make those decisions that are most comfortable, are ones that their friends are doing,
Absolutely.
ones that their parents say they should do, the most common ones. And a lot of times, they're not the best options for them, one. And number two, they're options that they may not be so satisfied with later once they do learn what they could have done had they chosen a different path. So definitely exposure through the K-12 system. In addition to that, I will say mentors that look like them. And not just direct mentors like teachers and advisors, but some of those individuals who can come in and speak with students. Mentors who don't even know that they're mentors. Someone just might see them and say, oh, I want to be like him or her, or I like what she's doing or what he's doing. So exposure, diversity among individuals who students have access to in the educational system. And the last thing I would say is fostering interests that are already there.
Okay.
Right? So often we have this perceived notion of, well, you're not that good in that. So I think you probably should go this direction, or don't even think about that. When we really should be saying, oh, you want to do that? Okay, here's some resources to help you do that. When we look at the disconnect between the K-16, K-20, and then where students ultimately end up when it comes to choosing a degree and beyond.
What role does structure, kind of play, or systemic dysfunction play?
It's definitely there. I think some of the cultural dynamics, because we have to look at, number one, the backgrounds of the students and how they're even coming to where they are, right? Because most of them are coming from backgrounds where both parents may or may not be working, but they're doing the best that they can.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to put their children on a good path with the knowledge that they have. When we look at the educational system and then the cultural background of some of the students, it's almost like we're looking or hoping that the educational system is structured in a way that will advance the students, right? And not keep them on the same path,
right.
Because then we will end up with, 100 years later, and we're still in the same place. Okay, so what is happening here? Are we just missing the mark? The other piece of that is we need to understand that students are taking on way more adult responsibilities earlier than what we had to. My whole thing was go to school. You focus on school. You don't have to work or do other. School is your job right now. That's not the case now. Students have siblings that they're taking care of. They have parents that they're taking care of. They're expected to work around the house or an outside job. And so definitely the structure of our homes, the structure of the educational system, and then how the educational system is responding to some of these different structures that we're seeing in the home and in the cultural backgrounds. Is a huge disconnect. And one is not responding to the other. And so we get these students out there that are just kind of like, okay, I'm here. Now what? And then we're trying to advise them.
Exactly. Can you speak to that disconnect of college readiness and STEM participation?
In addition to the information earlier about field trips and how that's not the way it was when we look at the disconnect, we're not starting early enough. If we really think about it, the things that children are interested in, they're still related, whether it's blocks, playing in the dirt, building things. But somewhere along the line, we have this idea of what a child should be doing. And so we will tell a female child, don't play in the dirt. You'll get dirty. Instead of saying, well, let's build this with the dirt. So I think we move them too quick from the very things that they're interested in, right? And I think when we look at college readiness, all of that impacts whether or not they're even ready, not just academically, but then in that self-identification. Okay, I've been steered from this, I've been steered from that. Okay, who am I and what am I supposed to be doing? And how do I fit into this educational context? What degree am I supposed to pursue? And then once I finish that degree, what career am I going to get? Too often we have students choosing and majoring in different degrees without a clear path of where they're going to end up. It's too many college recipients without a comparable career. And then there are student loans that have to be paid back. So it's almost like a cycle. We're creating this cycle of students who get degrees, take out loans to get degrees, but they don't have a comparable career to pay back those loans. Not to mention they don't even know what they want to do with the degree, and the cycle just begins and it continues. Right? So this is actually where I feel my book comes in, because it focuses on, the old childhood phrase, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, this sort of takes that spin and focuses more on what do you want to do, right? So more the activity piece of it, getting the students excited about the skill part of it. these students really do not know that there are like a host of other things more than what you see on TV or social media. There are a wide variety of careers that you can do in STEM. And so then it got me thinking, maybe we need to focus on what students can do and not necessarily what they can be. Right? And so the book series itself is titled Exploring STEM with Teely and Guba. And so Teely and Guba are the main characters of the book. I was going to say children because I feel like they're children, but they're characters. And they do not have a specific ethnicity or race. Okay, they're just diverse. And there's a reasoning behind that. I wanted students to be able to see themselves in the characters, right? And not just say, okay, that's a black character. No, that's not. That's just a character from a diverse background. Now, for one, that may mean the character is Latino, maybe Native American, they may be Pacific Islander, they may be black. Whatever that character means to you, I want that student to be able to see themselves in it, right? And so currently there is one book in the series, and it's entitled Teely and Guba's Exciting Escapades Through STEM. And so the book itself, it just goes on different escapades of STEM activities and things that students can do. So there are more books, but in the meal. But then this is the first one, and it's in English and Spanish. The structural piece, I think, is super, super important. Because if you think about it, a lot of times when we see certain individuals who may say, that's them. That's not me. That's not for me. And when we build these networks around us that our children have easy access to, where it becomes close to them, and they're able to own it, have some ownership of that. Oh yeah, that's such and such, and it doesn't appear to be so elitist. It's just that's the norm for them, right? Oh yeah, that's attainable for me. That's something I can do. That's not the other. That's for me too. It's important for me to put it in Spanish as well for several reasons. One, I did want it to speak to a broad range and broad group because my area is diversity, and so that's important to me, and language falls under that for me. And so because it comes in both, I want children who read the book to understand I don't just have to know English. I can pursue other languages as well, right? And so if I know the book in English, then it'll be easier for me to translate that over into Spanish. I can still know what it is I'm talking about. The series itself just takes a holistic approach to educating students of color in STEM, in reading, and language.
How do you build upon a children's book and then translate that into stuff at the middle school, secondary, post-secondary, and so on?
There has to be opportunities for students to learn about STEM, especially when we're looking at best practices. If we within the educational system do not provide that, we are doing our children and our students a disservice because we're putting them out there to make decisions without having a clear knowledge base when they're making the decisions. So I would definitely say opportunities that are built into the curriculum, opportunities for students to learn about STEM and other careers as well, and not just the academic piece. Because if students are able to see a specific career at the end, then when that math or science gets difficult, they have a motivation to push through it, okay? Because they can see, oh yeah, well this is what I want to be, this is what I have to do. The other I would say is diverse mentors across the curriculum and not just in certain sectors, but across it. So students can see people at every stage of their educational journey. I think that's super important because it goes back to what you said about creating those structures and networks around students so that they can see people doing good things who look like them. The other I would say is when developing the curriculum, it should definitely build, okay? Because so often we see students who may transfer from the community college into the 4-year and they lose courses, they lose credits. But what we don't understand is that for a lot of these students, it's time and it's money, right? So it gets expensive and it's super time consuming. They have families. and they have jobs and they have other responsibilities outside, but they still want to get a credential.
Right.
So making sure that when students go through the system, there's some type of alignment to where one builds on the other, and they're not left having to take additional credits or lose some.
Right. You're like walking in your calling, right? I mean, I would make that.
Oh, absolutely.
So what call of action would you make to others as it relates to those who are interested in equity-minded approaches to diversity and STEM education and increasing pathways into the community colleges?
Starting at any point is good because there's gaps at each point. Now, starting early is more impactful when students are at that impressionable stage. So definitely start early and be consistent with it. The next would be to be aware of interests of not just children, but even once they get into elementary school and high school, be in tune with what students are saying they're interested in and help them foster that and provide resources for them to foster that. They are looking to us to guide them, right? So it's only right and it's only fair that we listen to what they're saying and provide opportunities that align with that. So then they can be a success story. The other thing would be, I think we have to be intentional on our discourse and our implementation of programs and services for students. A lot of times we implement programs and services because we think that they're beneficial for students. Then we find out that that's not really what our students need. And if we listen to them, we will be able to understand what they need, and we can provide programs that respond to those needs, whatever they may be.
Right.
And the last thing is we have to hold our educational systems accountable to educating our students holistically. It's not just about academics. It is about preparing them to move on, not just to complete a degree, but then to move on to the next degree if they choose, or even a career, and then ultimately be productive citizens. Our students spend a large majority of their time in the educational system for them not to be prepared in the end. To sum all of that up, I think that we shape our future and what we want our future to look like by how we intentionally prepare our students and our children.
Thank you, Dr. Dimitra Jackson, for spending this time with me this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information about diversity in STEM, we recommend that you visit Dr. Jackson's faculty profile for a list of recommended readings. For more podcasts, links to today's recommended resources, or to share your comments and suggestions, visit occrl.illinois.edu/democracy or send them via Twitter @OCCRL. Tune in next month when Dr. Angela Welton from OCCRL talks with Amanda Bergen-Shilcock, the Director of Upskilling Policy at the National Skills Coalition, about policy trends and resources that support adult learners. Background music for this podcast is provided by DubLab. Thank you for listening and for your contribution to educational equity, justice, and excellence for all students.